All right, well, I just want to welcome everybody to the first of our kind of community forums about our interim superintendent search. Um, my name is Ryan Tressel. I'm the chair of the school committee. I'm also on the interim superintendent search subcommittee that was formed, as well, along with TJ Roffey, who is the vice chair of the school committee, and Beth Stafford, who is also on the school committee. I just want to set up and just explain a little bit. I'm sure, I think a lot of you here already know this, but just we're also, broadcasting this out to the community just to explain. So I think there's a lot of questions about what this process is and what the purpose of it is. Because our former superintendent left, stepped down at the end of December, we needed to, over the holiday break, we needed to appoint an acting superintendent. And the fear I had was January 4th, right before the winter break ended, if there was a snowstorm, who was the community going to listen to? Who was going to decide whether we had school and all those things? We are fortunate in this district that there are a number of people who work here in the district who have a superintendent's license, and also some that have been superintendents in the past. And so the committee met over the Christmas holiday, and we voted to appoint Dr. John Marcus, who is currently was the principal of the Duval Elementary School, to be the acting superintendent while we, to fill that gap while we went through the process of finding an interim superintendent. We had set this process up when earlier that we knew that we were going to be looking for an interim superintendent in January, and we reached out to our partners at MASC, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and looked for their advice, on how to do this. And they say, okay, well, you're going to do, a search. You're going to look for people, that are capable of being interim superintendents. And initially, they had said, well, till the end of the school year. As we discussed with them, talked with them more, the realities of kind of the timetable that we're on in terms of a lot of schools that are looking for superintendents start their searches in the fall, not in January and February. And this is the next permanent superintendent that we select. I mean, it's a very important decision we're going to have to make, and I did not want to rush that. So the reality is that if we if we appoint a new interim superintendent, it will be through June of 2027. So it'll be for the rest of this year and next year, so that and the other part of it too is not just wanting to rush it, but also that just given the cycle of how superintendents, kind of hired, that cycle tends to start in the fall, not now. So there would be a larger pool of qualified candidates, in September, October, November when we start that process, and if we started it in February and March. So the question is kind of like, well, if we have an acting superintendent, why do we need to, pick an interim superintendent? And really, and this is just something that I'm committed to as the new chair of the school committee, given all that's happened, being transparent and being communicative with the community is really important to me. And especially if we're going to be picking someone for a 15, 16-month appointment versus, a 5-month appointment or 6-month appointment, I really wanted to make sure that we were listening to the stakeholders in the community, the parents, community members, and we're also going to have, there will be another forum like this for the staff of the schools to be able to, and that will obviously be just, that'll be a different format just because we want to make sure we're preserving their confidentiality because they're talking about their future boss. So we don't want it to be something that will be, open to the public. But we are fortunate in that, and this is something that when our MASC representative came and met with us at our school committee meeting on January 7th, is that most school districts are not with that, and find themselves in a position, don't have someone necessarily in the district that is capable of filling in as superintendent. So we are in a good and unique position that we have Dr. Marcus, who is, he's, for those that have watched our school committee meetings and watched them last night, and our budget subcommittee meetings, has been working very diligently on the 27 budget. He's been working insanely insanely hard to do what a process he's been there for about 3 weeks that normally would have started probably in September and October. He started on January 5th to get ready for our budget hearing, which is next Wednesday night. So that does give us a couple nice options, which is that we don't have to necessarily rush this interim process in terms of, where I think other districts might be in a situation where they're like, we really need to get someone ASAP. We have someone in there doing the job right now. And we as a committee could vote to appoint Dr. Marcus to be the interim superintendent through June 2027. We could also look at outside candidates, so that would include a lot of times this interim positions are filled by basically, a lot of times it's retired superintendents who'll come in and do the job and, get a waiver from DESE to be able to do the job. And those are people that, and those tend to be the people that become interim superintendents because they already have superintendent experience, so they can kind of jump in. We do have someone right now who's doing the job, but like I said, I want to hear from the community and hear from the staff to make sure that we're making a decision that is informed by feedback from the stakeholders in this community, because it's really important to us that we are not just, making decisions without, especially in such an important decision as this, without hearing from the people that are going to be directly affected by our choice. So the purpose of this is really is to hear what you folks have to say about your thoughts about what is going right in the district right now, what are things that need work, and what is your kind of vision or idea for the kind of leader that you want to help us through what is a very, very difficult time. I don't know that being a superintendent is ever a job I would want to have, but being a superintendent of Whitman-Hanson Regional School District at this moment in time is definitely a job I would never want to have. So I think that it's a very, very important, whoever we put in there, it's a fundament. It's going to be such a critical and fundamental that we pick someone that is absolutely the best person for the job, because we are in such a perilous period of time with our budget and financial situation that we really can't afford to get this wrong. So the more feedback we get from the more stakeholders in the community, the better decision we'll be able to make. So really, my job here tonight is to set that up and then open this up to the people that are here to see what your answers are to those questions and what you want to see from us as a school committee as we make a decision in the coming weeks and months about who will be the leader of this district for the next, more or less a year and a half. So, so I'm going to open the floor up to see if anybody here has, wants to start that conversation with their thoughts, and then we'll just kind of see how that conversation goes. So, anybody want to?
To me, on my personal experience, I got two kids. They've been out of high school for a while now. One's a sophomore in college, one's a senior in college. But through my experience with the culture at the school, and we dealt with a lot of, it was a very bad experience. And through those bad experiences, dealing with people, 2 or 3 people through the administration, it couldn't have been any worse. So if someone thinks we're going to replace, or the superintendent's going to step down, and that's it, and it's just him, they're highly, highly mistaken. So what I recommend is, which I don't want to see, is someone who is up at the high school now get that job as superintendent. So I think there's got to be more people that got to go. Not just the truth. I hate to say it, but it's the truth.
Okay.
That's just the beginning. What I'm going to be saying.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. No, thank you.
Clear as day.
Yeah.
If you think someone that's working there right now should be superintendent, or the superintendents at last meeting that I was at that going to work with the leadership team, are you kidding me? Come on. Come on.
Okay.
That's a start.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
To echo what Mr. Kelly just said, I had the word culture written down really as number 1. And the numbers that we were told by the WHEA union was that 89% of the staff voted no confidence in the superintendent, which means 11% had confidence in him, which means there are people still in the building who were on that same page of his behavior, former superintendents, and I say it's the tone at the top, right? So it concerns me, yes, and this doesn't apply to or it does maybe the next superintendent coming along, but still to really dive into what the culture is here at Whitman-Hanson. And like you said, you wouldn't want this job, but I think your comment might have been coming from budgetary, financial wise, but there's a whole, how do we feel about going to school, right? How do kids feel? How does staff feel? And they'll let you know coming to school. But there needs to be a lot of work done to improve things. For the next superintendent, I would want to see that they're not just checking boxes, they're actually doing the work. That they're willing to accept services and programs to the district that don't cost any money, and specifically things that I advocated for as a former school committee member, which I'll say is safe routes to schools, right? Massachusetts offers these grant programs that are free. And administration told me, well, that might be another ask. You know, we have to be open-minded and we have to be able to help kids best they can. Just to say, I would want the next superintendent to know the regional school laws and our policies. Seems like a given, right? But wasn't necessarily the case. Increased communication with both the public and the committee itself. From my own experience, I would measure that by, at minimum once a month communication from the leadership and how he or she is implementing the strategic plan and carrying out the mission and the vision and really talking about that more. I never heard that much in the past. And lastly, to be a champion, someone who really puts students first and not politics. And students right from preschool up to high school. I'm really concerned about the next 2 years, and specifically in regards to Whitman Middle School coming online in 18 months. And I talked about it a couple of years ago, once the school building passed and we knew 5th grade was going to move up from both Conley and Duval, that leaves 8 open classrooms. What was the plan for that space? And then one of the superintendent's goals was preschool. Perhaps expanding it. We hadn't heard anything more about that. But because I don't have a lot of responsibility and I'm not an elected official anymore, I take some time watching the Massachusetts Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. And just on Tuesday, Secretary Tutwiler spoke that they're proud that Massachusetts is moving to all 26 gateway cities having universal preschool available to all kids in 26 cities, including Brockton and Quincy and Taunton. So we're behind the 8 ball, and I talked about community partnership preschool initiative grants that are available. So things like that, we've got to get moving on this stuff. And I understand if you're getting advice about 18 months interim, but I'll leave it up to the committee whether the right candidate wants to just sit there for 18 months. Are they just going to sort of hold us steady, or are we going to move forward? And so that concerns me, but I think that's
Okay. Don? Anyone else? What are we looking for as a community for this interim superintendent, if it's going to be like I said, a year and a half? Like as Dawn said, is it going that is a if we're looking at a superintendent taking over from January to June, that's a different role than being someone from January to next June, right? It's not just going to be getting us through this year. It's going to be setting the table up for future years as well, and in 27 and 28 and beyond. And then, that's why this decision is so important. That's why we all, as a school committee members, want to hear what your vision is for our next, for an interim superintendent, because it will be an important job. Yes.
I came from Hampton because I can't go to the Hanson
Okay.
Forum on Monday night. I'm Kathy DePasqua Egan, live in Hanson. All my kids and stepkids and now grandchildren go to our system. I would like to see long-term, not just our core subjects, not just our sports, not just our clubs, but visual and performing arts, including music, art, and drama, that those would be areas that the interim and permanent, whatever, superintendent would be in favor of and familiar with and willing to advocate for, although monies will be tight. But I and a bunch of other people will work hard to try to get the funding. But I would really like an advocate for our superintendent, and when you're doing your search, perhaps you could mention the words visual and performing arts, music, art, drama, see if there's any kind of a spark in the eye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other feedback?
I'm
Ms.
just going to
Bellino?
give you some opinions. So Kelly Milito, I work for the Conley School. Just since Dr. Marcus has taken over, I've noticed increased communication, kindness, like a sympathy for what the staff has been through, because I do feel like we're a little traumatized by what we went through. We lost friends, we lost staff members. It was awful. It was so sad to be here. And so just to have someone come in and recognize what the schools went through, I thought was amazing, because we don't typically get that kind of feedback. So that was wonderful. Dr. Marcus has been visible in the schools. He's already been here multiple times, which is not something that we're used to. I know a lot of people that I really respect in this district. I've worked here for over 10 years, are thrilled with the choice that you've made right now. I was thrilled. I breathed a big sigh of relief when I heard that he was appointed. I know not everyone will agree with me, but he's a good, smart man, and I would be thrilled if he was our interim superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Bellino. Ms. Jester?
Yeah, so I wanted to come tonight because I think I do have a unique perspective. I have gotten to work very closely with Dr. Marcus for the last year and a half. I was part of the parent interview group when he came as an applicant to be our principal at Duval. I've been on the PTO at Duval for 5 years. I'm currently the president of the PTO there and a co-chair of the Whitman Middle School PAC. So I have a middle schooler, I have a 5th grader at Duval, moving up to the middle school, 8th grader, moving up to high school. And Dr. Marcus is amazing, truly. All of the qualities that we saw in him coming in to Duval, where there were some challenges in the environment and in the interactions at times, he's there, he's visibly there. He has a smile on his face. He just came to the art night. Like, he's everywhere he can be. He's inclusive. He cares about the students, top priority, and he cares about the staff. He cares about the community as a whole. The fact that he didn't necessarily plan to be a superintendent again, but said, I got to have a conversation with him after he took that position, and he said, this is what I need to do for this community and the school district and the kids and all the kids, not just the Duval kids. So I think and I'm learning all of this as we go, but the idea of taking a superintendent out, bringing in Dr. Marcus, bringing in another interim superintendent while we look for a permanent superintendent, just the time it would take that person to learn the district, the kids, the schools, the things that I don't know either, but just that time to learn all of that, knowing it's temporary, for me just doesn't make a lot of sense. I feel like him being here, that's not even counting all of his past experience, being a superintendent, being in all these school districts, being in the schools. So I feel like just the fact that we have somebody here who's just so dedicated and so incredible with the kids. Watching him just walk into the CAF for the art night, the kids are like they're so excited to see him. I've spent a lot of time at Duval over the last 8 years, a very lot of time, and have seen, you know, the way that the teachers feel with Dr. Marcus it's a big change. I feel like he can bring that to the whole district. I feel like he can bring that to all the kids. And we are very fortunate at Duval to still have an amazing admin team in Miss Craig and Mrs. Salomon currently that are able to keep the Duval culture going while Dr. Marcus brings those skills to the entire district. So I feel very strongly that he would be the right choice for the interim. I don't know past that. I feel like that's another step.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the only choice that makes sense for all of the kids.
I think it's interesting the word you used, the word that Dawn used as well as culture. I think that's really an important part that I've discovered. You know, I'm a new school committee member. I was elected in May, and at the end of November they made me the chair, which is I don't know if that was a punishment or what. I don't know if that was, they're like, give it to the new guy. I don't know what the thought was by that, but being the chair and going through this process at the time that I've gone through, and I did have to go and meet with all of the individuals in the district. This is in December that had the licensure for superintendents to see if anyone would be willing to do this. And in those conversations, I heard a lot about the culture of this district. And that was things that you hear things, you hear bits and pieces here and there, but really hearing what it was like and what it has been like. And I think that is something that we are really focused on. It's not just, the budget is obviously the tiger right at the door right now, but there's obviously other problems in this district beyond that budget part. And I think that's something that we have to consider as well. So I'm glad you used that word culture because it ties into what Dawn had said earlier. So, yeah.
I also want to say, I'm here inclusive, right? So obviously I'm the co-chair for CPAC. So special ed is something that's near and dear to my heart as I have a child with special ed. And, you know, I just listened to this whole thing was a mess, right? We know that. But listening to the students talk, it broke my heart. It really did. Like, I don't feel these students were supported in the way that they should have been. I don't think they got any respect that they should have gotten. And then I don't know Dr. Marcus. I have heard nothing but wonderful things about him. And I do agree that he really should be looked at going forward. I think there's going to be turnover. If we have him now, we're looking for somebody else, and we're looking for somebody else, what does that mean for our district? We need someone who's going to think long term. Like when you start interviewing, I mean, I really want to look at it. I want to say, what's their 5-year plan? Like, what's their vision? What are they doing for inclusive, the diversity? We have a lot of diverse students in our district. I mean, I need all that to be really looked at. What are we doing to keep our kids in district, right? How are we supporting them? What supports are we giving the teachers? I want our teachers to stay here. I like our teachers. Our teachers is what makes this district. How are we retaining them? How are we educating them? How are we giving them supports? So that's what I really want to be asking of whoever we look at. But from what I'm hearing, Dr. Marcus is wonderful, and he was one of my top choices. So I think, you know, he should be higher in that. If he wants to stay on, higher on that list because it's too much. We have so much going on.
Yeah.
We need someone who's strong. We need someone who is transparent, and he's constantly been emailing us, which I love. I don't need to know everything, but I need to know like the basics, right?
Yep.
I need to know that someone's in control, and someone's sharing. So I have a whole list of interview questions if you need some.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, that is, and a lot of it, I know a lot of the things that you're talking about too are going to be things that are going to be part of the, because, and this is, obviously there's this is a very kind of, I don't say, to say it's a unique situation is kind of understating it a little bit, right? We are looking at doing a lot of different things that we need to do kind of simultaneously, right? And so when we're talking about, like the 5-year plan, long-term, like those are questions really for when we're looking for that permanent superintendent. And that's not going to be that far away that process is going to start, right? So that is, even if we're talking about, okay, we're not going to be able to, we might, really realistically looking to start that process to find someone for July of 27. Like, even though that seems like impossibly far right now, like March of 26 seems impossibly far for me right now. I mean, it's like, I'm obviously wearing my shorts now, but I want it to be more shorts weather already. It's like this January seems like it's taking forever. But all that having been said, the process to get someone for July 1 of 27 is going to be starting around the corner. It's only a few months away realistically. And that's something, and that process is going to be a lot more formalized, and there will be like a steering committee that will comprise it, but it will include school committee members, but also staff members, community members, parents, students. It's really going to be something, and that'll be a very in-depth and very kind of comprehensive process, because that person, ideally you want to have a superintendent that's going to be here for, I don't want to say a generation, but someone who's going to be here that's going to be able to really make a sizable and lasting impact on our district. And so you need to make sure you're doing a really good job of vetting that person and, and really sculpting the job description for that permanent person around what the district needs. And so a lot of the questions, a lot of the concerns that you brought up, obviously are things, inclusivity, communication, obviously we talk about the smarts and we talk about like the really technical parts of that job, but I do think that key to all of this is that when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about, and I like that word culture a lot, because they set the tone of what the culture of the district is going to be. And so that's something that is, might seem secondary to the kind of, I did see someone make some comment about like, somewhere about like, oh, someone that, has, can do basic math and all this, making these jokes and stuff. And clearly we need someone who has, is capable of working through and figuring out, and obviously Dr. Marcus is doing that part right now. I don't know how, next, as I said, I mentioned at the outset, next Wednesday we have our budget hearing. We're going to go into detail about next year's budget. Like, it's not going to be a pretty picture. We don't, the kind of morass that we're in our budget situation was not fixed, right? Like, as painful as the cuts that were made in November were, and as unpopular and as unwanted as those cuts were made in November, they didn't totally fix the problem. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to kind of straighten out the budget of this district so that it is healthy going forward and that we can build on it going forward. The budget that was presented and voted on last year did not accurately reflect what was going on and what was being spent in the district, and that disconnect is what caused all of these problems. We were spending more than we had budgeted for. The positions that we were spending it on, the people and the jobs that money was being spent on were absolutely vitally necessary for this district. They just weren't accounted for in the budget, and that just causes a problem because you put more money on the credit card than you had, and but those cuts that were made in November did not totally fix it. So Dr. Marcus and the people in the central office that he is working with to present this budget and develop this budget they're working extremely hard. So I know, and I've seen, as I'm also the chair of the budget subcommittee, because why not be the chair of another committee? So we've been going through, and I've been looking at those budget documents. I've been seeing the work they've been doing in it to first off figure out, okay, what is the actual money that we're spending to run this district right now? Not what we said it was in March of 25 when they were voting for the 26 budget, and what they presented to the communities they were spending. What are we actually spending? What does it actually cost to run this district? And then using that and figuring out, okay, like, well, where are we going to have to make tough decisions, for the budget going forward to basically right size what our budget says and what we can afford within the budget that the money that we have and going forward for 27. So he's doing that work. I think that there's a larger question, a larger need about looking at that leadership piece and that culture piece, because that is also important, because that's something that has really weighed on me, was how difficult this was. I mean, obviously for our students, but for the staff in these buildings, to be, you know, doing a job well, and then being told in October, like, you're not going to be here anymore. And then what that does to those people that lost their jobs, and what it does to the people that remained and had to fill in, because that's the thing, is that the work that those people were doing still needed to be done after Thanksgiving, and it was just the people that were remained had to pick up the slack to do that, and that's not a fair thing. It's an unconscionable thing that had happened, and so we need to make sure that not only are we fixing the financial part that brought us here, but that we're healing the wounds that were created by that mismanagement of funds in these schools. And that's something that I'm looking for when I'm looking for, I'm only one member of the committee, but the piece that is most important to me is that kind of moral leadership of a district, because that is really important too, and that sets a tone for all the way down of how these districts run and how the students of this district feel about coming to these buildings and coming to these schools. Because I think we all can agree that the teachers in these buildings are wonderful, and they do, and as a parent of students here in the district, they do miracles every single day. And I think that's the idea, that having a leader that does not respect the sacrifice that they make to make those miracles happen is not a leader I want in this district. So that's something that's a really important thing for me, just as one voting member, Ms. Byers.
So a question, when the committee posts a job position for the interim, is there a time frame on that? Is there an expectation that interim is going to be until June of 27?
I mean, that's something we would have to discuss as we're taking the information from these community forums. We're gonna and the staff forum, and we're gonna use that to craft a job description. But the like I said, are just trying to be realistic, and just inherently, I'm a kind of cautious and pragmatic person in terms of things. I do not feel super comfortable trying to hire a permanent superintendent in a couple months. So I think that it would probably be, it's not only my decision, but that's where I think the committee is kind of leaning in the idea of giving us the time to properly do a very well vetted and well run superintendent search for July of 27. That's just kind of, anything could change, nothing's decided, but that would be kind of my recommendation, just looking at the timetable, looking at how my experience in municipal government is that everything is way slower than you think it is. It takes a lot, sometimes things take a lot longer than they really probably, you would expect them to. So I want to be realistic about that this could take longer than 3 months to do this. And I think that's, but again, to answer your question, I don't know what the description will say, because that's part of our charge as a subcommittee, is to come up with that. That would be that's my expectation. That's what I'm trying to set the table for in that way. But I mean, it's not my ultimate decision of how it will be.
Okay. So I guess big picture, I'm just curious. So Dr. Marcus is acting superintendent right now with no time frame.
Right.
I don't know if there's conversations where maybe he has said to you, I'm willing to stay as the active, but not for a year and a half, like not an interim for a year and a half. So is it possible you could even keep him as acting and put the job posting for the permanent superintendent, right? In an effort to avoid a transition where he's there right now, if he's thinking, I could do this maybe for 6 months to a year, but not the full year and a half, so is he not going to throw his hat in the ring for the interim? You know, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, right? Is he not going to throw his hat in the ring? So now we're like, oh, and we open that can of worms, and now we've got to hire an interim when he was acting. And what I'll say is, to echo Jen, my children went to Duval. They're long graduated from high school, but I have a lot of connections still at Duval. And the first feedback was, oh my, we're losing Dr. Marcus. And if that tells you anything about how wonderful he would be in the role of superintendent, that says it right there. Because if, on the opposite, if they were like, oh, get him out of our, like, good, be gone, get him out of our school, we don't need him anymore. But they wanted to keep him. All the parents said, oh, we're gonna miss him, we want, which tells you, and I said to some parents, I said, if he's so wonderful, wouldn't it be wonderful if he could offer what he does for Duval to the whole district? So that, for me, feels like a wonderful fit, and I would hope that we can continue that fit with him out there. But that devil's advocate.
Right, no, I think that that's right. I think that again, I think that there is an inherent logic. So a lot of people have asked this thing about being like, okay, we have an acting, then we get another person, then we get a permanent. Like, I understand the idea that that doesn't seem like particularly, and again, like I said, I'm a very pragmatic and practical person, or I try to be. That doesn't seem super pragmatic and super practical. I'm not advocating for that. What I'm here to do is to find out what this just seems like a very big decision to make. Like I said, especially because we made that decision over the Christmas holiday. Like, it was December 22nd. We were in the comm room in an empty high school, and we made the decision to appoint him. I don't feel comfortable as a school committee member saying, well, let's just keep him for obviously, I was joking with Ms. Melito earlier, I like to think I know what's best, and I like to think I know that I'd make a good decision. But given the history of what has happened in this district, I don't feel comfortable making that decision, especially if we've made it, in an executive session in December over the Christmas break. No one knew we were doing it, and then to kind of just say, oh, by the way, this guy is going to be the guy for the next year and a half, without talking to the community and getting their feedback. So, I'm hearing that from a lot of people, and so again, it does, and again, a lot of this is predicated on the idea that when we reached out to our representative at Mass at the beginning of December, when we knew that we might be in this position in January, they're giving us a playbook based on what they do in other districts, which is that, maybe you have, a superintendent leaves mid-year, maybe there's someone in the district that can fill in and do the kind of I think in my mind, like I said, calling the snow days, signing the documents the legal documents that need to be signed as the superintendent, but be like a little placeholder until we found a retired superintendent that could come in that knows how to be a superintendent and has that experience. We're fortunate. We have multiple people actually in this district that have been superintendents in the past that work in our district. So we're very fortunate, and it's kind of unique. That's not the case in a lot of other districts. So we are kind of taking a playbook that is used in other districts that don't have the advantages that we have here in that the resources that we have at our disposal in terms of the people that work in this district already. So so while the process maybe doesn't, it seems a little like that seems crazy to be kind of like have a guy, have another guy, have a lady, and then have another person. We don't necessarily have to do that, but I don't feel comfortable making that decision as a school committee, because I think I'm just very reticent about the idea of making decisions that the community is not part of. And that is, oh yeah, I'm sorry, Jen, sorry.
So first I want to say thank you for actually taking the time to listen to the community and commenting back, because that's really been an annoying piece for me. But also, is there a community forum that you're offering to high school students where you're going to ask them, where you're going to provide that to them? Because I don't feel like this was really as inviting for them. And I think that if there was an opportunity during school hours that high school students could offer you information as to what is important to them and their leader, because I feel they did not feel heard, and I feel they are still reeling from what they lost.
Absolutely, yeah.
One. Two, I also want to say as a teacher, I hope that part of going forward that the person you look for is somebody that isn't going to give retribution to somebody for going forward and asking for help or seeking help for students or seeking what's right for students, because I know that is something that many teachers fear and live with, and I would like to see our district not do that to our students. A superintendent that I've heard amazing things about from teachers, parents, and staff are Hanover. So I think if you go and you look at things that that superintendent has done to make staff and students feel what they feel, would be amazing to do, because I would love to see a superintendent that makes staff feel the way that that superintendent makes their staff feel. Because it's not fun to work and not feel heard and feel there's big problems and see big problems and not be able to say where those problems are. So I think we need somebody that's willing to open their eyes, open their ears, and really hear, and not just yes people. I mean, that's just something that I think is extremely important.
I'm sorry, I know you came in later, so I don't know if we did talk, Dawn brought up that idea of like the culture of the school, and I think that's something that's very,
But you
very
nailed
important.
it with what you just said,
Yeah.
because I didn't say that. I didn't say the culture, retaliation, retribution part, which is so key. Thank you.
Yeah.
Which is, I talk to enough teachers. I know that that is a huge problem.
I want to also, because, so to your idea, and I'll talk to Dr. Jones of the high school about your idea about giving opportunity for students. The idea was, I was hoping that this would be an opportunity but your point is well taken too, that like high school students probably don't want to come to a cafeteria on a Thursday night and hang out with their parents and give feedback on it. So this might not be,
Well, they're on sports. A lot
Yeah.
of them are in sports. A lot
Yeah.
of them are doing their homework right now.
yeah,
Mine is at home doing
Yeah.
her homework, and I know that they lost a big thing.
Yeah, they did.
They lost
Yeah.
a huge piece of them, and I know my daughter's not healed from what she lost.
Yeah.
I know that it's still a problem, and I just would like to see. I would like to see someone actually listen and let them feel like they're finally being heard.
yeah. So I think that's a good point. All your points are well taken. I will say that the piece about the high school students is something that I'll talk about trying to get something that's set up so that they have an opportunity to also share their feedback. Maybe and again in a place where they're not having to miss sports or not having to skip their homework. Although my daughter would gladly skip homework to come.
Wind block might be a great
Wind block,
time.
yeah. So that's
You'll
that's
get
a great idea.
because they don't love that wind block.
So, thank you for that, Jen. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think we've heard a lot of feedback tonight. I don't know, if there's anything else you want me to bring back. Obviously, we're reporting this so that people in the community can see what people are saying. Again, that's part of it, is the idea that if we make a decision, and someone says, well, why'd you make the decision? I want to be able to say, like, here's the link. You can see what these community members said. And hopefully on Monday, we'll get some more community members. Obviously, like I said, the staff one, we want to make sure that's protected and quiet, but being able to share what kind of like a consensus or a feedback or general feedback of what staff has said as well, and being able to present that to people in the community that say, okay, the decision you made, why did you make it? You say, these are the things that we heard, these are the things that we were responding to from the community, because I know that this has been an extraordinary difficult time for the staff, for the students, but also for the community as well. Because and I believe this very strongly, that our schools are a community asset. They don't just belong to the kids that go there. They don't belong just to the parents of kids that go there. They belong to the whole community. And I think that the more that we can show that we value the community's input in this, because it belongs to all of us who live in these towns and these communities. And it's not just something that is the purview of parents and of students, but also of all of us, because it's all our responsibility. It's all of our charge as citizens to nurture and foster good schools for our students, because it is a tremendous resource for our communities. And it's clear that we have not done a good job of that, and we need to do a better job. And this is the beginning of steps to try and make those changes to make this a better community asset, and recognize the resources that we have in these schools. Because as I said, the teachers in these schools are absolutely wonderful, and they do invaluable and irreplaceable work. And I think that they need to be, to Jen's point, they need to be respected, listened to, and not be able to do the work that they do without fear, without any kind of apprehension about doing what's best for the students in these buildings, because that's what they and I know everyone says this, but nobody comes to be a teacher because they're like, this, I'm gonna, rolling in the dough, right? People do this because it's a calling, it's a thing that they feel in their hearts and their souls compelled to do. And so to make sure that passion is respected and used and utilized for the betterment of all the students here in Whitman-Hanson. And again, as I said, the superintendent's job on paper is to do the personnel and to do the budget, but they are also a moral leader for the district, and that is something that is very important to me as one of the votes on the school committee. And being the only one here makes me feel a little bit like I'm only representing myself here, but I think I don't know that many people in the committee would disagree with me that strongly that moral piece is what is really desperately needed here in our leadership. And that's going to be something that's going to be front and center for me as we make decisions about the interim position in the coming weeks, and then in the permanent position in the coming months as we make those decisions. Jen, and then Greg. Jen?
Just because you reminded me of one more thing I wanted to touch on. Back in November, when we heard about the cuts and we heard about who we're going to lose at all of the schools, but especially Duval in the middle school where I know the people and I spend a lot of time, that was obviously very difficult and sad and just awful for everybody. But my next concern was who's going to leave, right? Because why would you want to stay when you're in an environment where all of a sudden you get this email that like you might lose your job, but if you don't lose your job, the people you work with are going to lose your job, lose their job. And so then I started to be concerned about the next steps. And when I knew there was going to be an acting superintendent, interim superintendent, even just as a parent who just spends time at the schools, I was very concerned about who would be appointed and what that would mean for more people leaving and for the cultures of the schools. And I know you're going to do a whole thing with staff, and I'm glad that you're going to do that. I think that's the key because the students are the top priority, but the students are only going to get as much as they can from the people who are with them, who they're around, who they trust, who they come to see in the schools, the teachers, the building administration, the building principals. Like those are the people that need to be there for the kids. And all of that is going to hinge on who is put into that top position and who's willing to stay and who's maybe going to think about going somewhere else due to the culture, due to the fact that you don't know what's going to happen next. So I feel like that's the piece I would look at. I don't do budgets. They seem terrible. I don't want to get involved in that, but I think that Dr. Marks is capable of doing the budget, but above that, I think it's the personality, it's the culture, it's the way that you handle people, and it's the way that you show up every single day and you put yourself out there in the schools, walking around, seeing people. I'm in through the front door, making sure people know that you're there, and that's the difference that I have seen, just being in the school as a parent who's very actively involved, there myself, so.
Okay, no, that is a good point too, because I think that is obviously the big concern is that we also, we want to be a district that people want to come and work at. And we want people that work here to want to stay here. And I think that's, that is a key part. And to me, it lends a little extra credence to what I was talking about the staff, that given, I think, the culture here and the way maybe that they have been treated, that they're still here and they're still doing the work. But you're right. I don't want to do anything that's going to cause any of the people that we have here to decide. To Jen's point, I want to go to Hanover, right? Like I want them to be like, I want to stay in Whitman, or I want people to be like, I want to come to Whitman-Hanson. That's a district I want to teach in. And so that is, again, that moral piece is, I think, really important. But Greg, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to touch a little bit on Dr. Marcus. I hear all these great things about him, and then towards the end, someone had just said that he's a super strong person. And as far as looking for a superintendent, I think that's absolutely huge. Obviously, there's other qualities, integrity and lead by example I'd love to see, but being a strong person is huge because through experience, once again, at the high school, it's huge when there's more serious situations or incidents going on that you have to be a very strong person to deal with parents, kids, everything. And through experience, it couldn't have been worse for what I dealt with at the time. So you got to be a strong person. It sounds like, I mean, everyone was saying this, that, and everything great about him. Like, yeah, and I'm saying to myself, yeah, but this guy got to be a strong person, preferably an outside guy. And then someone mentioned he's a real strong guy or whatever. So I just, I think that's absolutely huge through what I've seen going on. And trust me, I'm not the only one, but
Right.
there's a lot more that stuff that, just aren't speaking up. And I'm not that type of guy that wants to, I'm sure none of us do that. But after this budget thing, even before that, my daughter wrote a huge thing on, past years, and it's just been awful. And this is just bringing this stuff up. Enough is enough. The budget thing was awful, but it's been awful there since then. And the administration, I couldn't emphasize enough how bad it was. But, and one more thing I want to say is though, as far as the teachers go, my daughter, the school was unbelievable. And the teachers are great, and they know what's going on too. Trust me, my kids have gotten close to some of the teachers. They know what was going on with the administration, which it still is. So again, if you think superintendent's gonna step down and that's gonna straighten everything out, no way. Common sense, no way. And not to mention, again, when Dr. Marcus, which I did disagree the one night he was interviewed and said, I'm gonna get with the leadership team. You think we need a new leadership team? I don't even know who's on it. I did find out because I thought a couple people might be on it. I'm like, you kidding me? I think we need a new leadership team. Why would we be going off the leadership team that's been going on all those years, the stuff that's going on all these years in this budget? Does that make any sense to you?
The leadership.
A leadership team. Why would be talking with the same leadership team? Does that make any sense? I'm asking.
I think that there's, again, I think that so as an acting superintendent, he's stepping into a situation where he's been there for now 3 weeks. I think that there's.
I don't mean to, he sounds like he's a great
No,
guy.
I think the point is that.
My point is, a new superintendent, everything that's going on, the school's gone to shit, the high school, the last 10 years. We're gonna say, I'm gonna get with my leadership team. I don't think the leadership team's working, to be honest with you. No disrespect to anybody. But that's just me. But the teachers have been unbelievable, and my kids had a great experience. But administration, and trust me, there's a lot more people that feel the same way as me. For whatever reason, I don't know why. People don't want to come out like us, I guess, I don't know, but there's a major problem.
Okay.
And let me emphasize, before this whole budget thing happened. Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Greg. All right, Jen.
I also think when you vet for the acting one thing, but for the definite permanent one, when you go to a district, as John said, if they're like eager beavers to sell them to you, that's a red flag to me. Having administrators that have been like you go to the school and you see how they work in their current district, and the ones that they're eager to sell them are the ones that you're like, that might not be a good choice. Dr. Marcus, they were all bummed to see him go. That's the person we want coming here. Is the one that the other people are sad to lose.
Yep.
I get what you're saying, like, it's, one person, you lost one person, right? That's not gonna change everything, right? I think this has been years. So we need someone who's gonna step into this role and really look at that top tier leadership team and make the necessary changes. I'm not saying just make those changes within that team to better support the students and the school, the district, the teachers, because changing that one person, I don't think this is not the answer. This is just kind of the bandage right now, and we need to look deeper into it. So it does, and we do need someone who's not afraid to really look into that culture.
And also
Central.
look into how much leadership is actually needed in a district our size. because when we look into that at the budget level, it's administrative heavy. And we were cutting teachers that are face to face with students, counselors that were keeping kids here on our planet. And we cut them instead of looking at administration and seeing if some administrators might be able to pick up some slack. Because I know teachers are being asked to pick up slack left and right.
I just want to make a point that those decisions were made not under Dr. Marcus.
Oh,
No,
we didn't,
I'm
we
not
Yeah,
saying
no,
that.
I'm just putting it out there that I feel like
yeah.
change
know.
is happening.
But it's, what other district has two superintendents? Brockton's a lot bigger than we are. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary.
Don?
I think what Jen just said, before you came, I also commented, or maybe after, the interim, right, are they here just for the status quo and just to hold it steady until a permanent comes on? Will an interim, and if by chance, if it's not Dr. Marcus, if it happens to be someone else, are they just simply gonna come in and go, okay, people are in place, I'm just here to make sure the bills are paid, oversight,
It's not
and
good.
leave it, status quo, I don't wanna rock the boat type of thing, is that what, or would an interim feel like they have the authority to make an organizational chart change, right? And really to reconstruct or make an analysis, a smart analysis of what is needed, what we have ability for, so forth. So I think that's.
Yeah, and again, I think that would be, as we look at an interim that will be here likely for the next year and a half or year and some change, like those are things that we can ask, right? Like that's, that we're not looking for someone who is just going to, like I said, initially when we were looking for an acting, we were thinking it would be someone for a couple weeks to make sure that everything was, maintained while we looked for an interim. Like I said, even this process is, when Mass came and talked to us, they were saying like, oh, blah, 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 like we'll do it this week, we'll do it this week, and we'll get you an interim by the end of January or something, or you can vote on the first week in February. And it was, that even seemed like, again, I don't want to rush any of these things, but I think that, and that's why I think we had choices of people that we could put in the acting. We looked at those choices, we discussed them, and we decided to go with Dr. Marcus, and that gave us the confidence that we could take a little bit longer to go through this process because we knew he wasn't just going to be, making sure, because the initial thought was we need an acting person so that if there's like a snow day, there's one of the days that I was at the central office in December, there was a smoke alarm issue at the Duval that kept going off, and so the superintendent had to go deal with that situation. So it's like, oh, the person that does that stuff, and for 3 or 4 weeks while we find it, while we do this process, and I think that we were able to find a candidate like Dr. Marcus in the district that was able to do, and like I said, doing the difficult work of doing the budgetary work. And I think if people did not watch our school committee meeting last night or listen to our budget subcommittee meeting, I submitted that to WHRSD this morning. That should be up in the next day or two. Some of the concerns you're talking about in terms of the where the budget is headed, in terms of that administrative piece, that is where he's looking to make because we're going to need to make cuts for 27 because with again that 26 budget is still it was not a solid budget, so it needs to be looked at and reconfigured to reflect what is actually being spent to run these schools in this year, and that's going to mean some cuts. And that he made a presentation last night that in kind of a preview of what is going to be coming next week at our budget hearing. But we've made cuts to teachers and to support staff, and we can't do it anymore. And that's I don't think I could vote for a budget that would cut more teachers and more paras before we cut non-student facing positions. I don't think I couldn't vote for a budget that did that without first looking at other things, because as I think it might have been Jen that said this, or it might have been Dawn, it might have been, but the idea that when those cuts were made in November, we made those cuts, I'll say, we're the school committee, we're ultimately responsible for them. After Thanksgiving, teachers and paras that remained had to do more work. They had to pick up the slack for the people that were let go. I think that, we can't ask them to do any more. And not before we ask other people to make sacrifices as well. So that would be, and Dr. Marcus made that part of his presentation last night, as far as the budget goes for 27. That's where he's looking to make those, and I don't want to see anybody lose a job. Like I'm not, that's like clearly, I mean, I wanted to be on the school committee because the work that has been done on behalf of my kids by the staffs at the preschool academy, the Duval, the Conley, and the Whitman Middle School, where my kids have attended, has made it's been a miracle what has happened, for my two kids. They are different, better people because of the work of the people in these buildings. And I wanted to come and help out and make, to help the teachers in these buildings and the ones at Hanson, even though I'm not from Hanson. And I don't, but to help make their jobs easier. And all I've gotten to do is make their jobs harder, and it sucks. I don't want to do it anymore. And so that's why like I said, I know that it seems kind of like convoluted and redundant to go through this process, but I'm taking it very seriously because this is a very, very serious thing that we're charged with, and that's why I'm glad to hear all the things that have been said tonight by folks here. I mean, I've gotten emails from folks in the last few weeks, and I'm very much looking forward to getting reports about what the staff has to say, and hopefully what we can get something set up for the high school students so they're able to do it as well and hear what their feedback is as well. Because I think that it is too big of a decision to be made by the 10 of us on our own without hearing from the people that are going to be directly affected by the choice that we make. And like I said, I thought this would be more fun when I pulled papers last February. It has not been fun, but the work is necessary, and it's I want to get to the place where I get to have fun doing this job, and not have it be just one horror after another every other Wednesday night, having to make awful decisions. I'd like to be able to make some good ones, and I'm hoping that with your help that we can make a good decision for our future for our district. Does anyone else have any other comments before we wrap up? I really appreciate people coming out. I know, like I said, I was hoping that this place would be filled to the rafters with parents, and we'd be here for like 3 hours, and it would be like, but I think what was beneficial of this is that by having this smaller group, people were able to have more expansive comments and then be able to say, come back and say more things and add more information. And I think that hopefully that people do end up watching this. I know I'm sure that WHCA is the most watched channel in Whitman and Hanson, and people are going to watch this, but hopefully they do and they can see what you guys have said, because I think it's really helpful and informative for what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks. So I want to thank everyone for coming, and I'll just add that we're again next Monday night, February 2nd, we're doing this again at Hanson Middle School at 6:30. So people that, if you know people that couldn't make it tonight, because I know there were other events, and I know there are always other events, it's a very, I know kids have sports, kids have activities, there are, so I appreciate that you guys taking the time to come out and do this. Again, it was not a fun night to come out at all. I was, stepped outside and I did not want to be out there. So I really appreciate you guys coming and taking the time to speak with me, and also, more importantly, speak to the people that will be watching this at home. Other school committee members will be able to watch this, online, and be able to see what, I think this is a good cross section of our community here, and be able to hear what you guys have to say. So thank you very much for coming, and again, thank you very much. Hope you guys have a good night Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.